Welcome to How I Got Here, hosted by seasoned educator Jeremy Proper. This is a podcast of conversations with his former students discussing their journey from middle school to where they are today. Guests highlight their successes and the life lessons learned along the way. And now let's welcome the host, Jeremy Proper.
Welcome to How I Got Here with Mr. Proper. I will be talking to former students who will tell their story of their personal journey from Mr. Proper's class, aka Club 128, to where they are now. Everyone has a different path to get to where they are now, and that path may just be the beginning to where they actually want to be. In these podcasts, I hope to tap into the journeys that my former students have taken. Also, for that matter, to share their experiences with my current students and anyone else who is interested in seeing how hard work in and out of the classroom actually pays off. Let's welcome today's guest, Natalia Cooper. Hi, Natalia.
Hi, Mr. Proper.
How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I am wonderful now that I'm talking to you. So, as I start all these podcasts, I want you to take a few minutes to briefly introduce yourself. Please include when you left the Don, where you went to high school, then college, post-college, and what you're currently doing now.
I'm Natalia Cooper. I grew up in Delray Beach, went to Don Estridge for middle school. I started in 2007, fall 2007. So I guess that means I left in spring 2011. I don't know if I did that.
Yeah, that's right. That's
okay.
Right.
Okay.
Because you start at the beginning of one year, but it overlaps in 2 years every school year. So you start in 7, but it's really the 07-08 school year. Yeah. No.
Yes. Okay. And then I went to Atlantic. I got an IB diploma from Atlantic, and then I went to Howard. I studied economics and political science at Howard University in Washington, D.C., and I currently work at Georgetown University at the Georgetown Center on Poverty and Inequality. I'm a policy analyst there.
Wow, that's a mouthful.
Yeah.
Well, as always, first off, thank you so much for coming on and telling my students about yourself. And so far, we're off to a great start with all this heavy-duty education. So how did you get from middle school to Howard University? Like, how much work went into getting to this? And secondly, to add to that, was that your ultimate dream to go to Howard?
Well, it was a lot of work. At Don Estridge, it's pretty rigorous middle school, and I loved every second of it. And Atlantic was too. I think it prepared me pretty well to go off and do whatever I wanted at whichever college I wanted to. And I wouldn't say Howard was my dream because I knew I always wanted to go to college, but it was kind of hard for me to visualize, like what I wanted out of a school or what really the options were. And my high school teacher, he was my golf coach and philosophy teacher at Atlantic. He said to me one day, you should go to Howard. Smart Black girls like you, they go to Howard. And then he would start printing out journal articles from Howard professors, and he'd leave them on my desk. And I was like, okay, I get the memo. I applied. And awesome. I also knew, thinking realistically about like the cost of college, that I was going to go to the school that was the cheapest. I applied everywhere in Florida. I was considering UF, FSU, and then I got a huge merit scholarship from Howard, a full scholarship, and it ended up being cheaper for me to go to this private school in DC than to even stay in Florida with bright futures. And So
you went through the whole program of bright futures, probably with the idea that that's what you were going to use to go to college. But because
And my dad had Florida prepaid for us too. So
wow.
Yeah.
So this was just totally out of left field. Natalia's hard work actually got her this.
Yes, although he would always say, there are 3 of us. I have 2 younger sisters, and he got 2 Florida prepaids. He said, one of you will get a scholarship somewhere. And he would say that from when we were so little, and it ended up being true. And
that is hilarious.
My younger sisters used both the prepaids. So yeah.
Look at Dad making that prediction, and he was right. That's amazing. Wow.
Yeah.
So here you're in high school and you're working, and then all of a sudden new dreams and new possibilities opened up. Did that really all of a sudden, was that maybe even a weight off your your head where you were just kind of like, oh, I can do this now?
I think it was a weight off my head. I found the whole college application process very overwhelming. Senior year in the IB program is no joke, and then you have this new part-time job of, curating what kind of schools you're interested in and making sure you have all the application requirements and asking for letters of recommendation and drafting the essays. And I found it very overwhelming, and I found the possibility of rejection very overwhelming too.
Ooh,
And I think I was pretty unique among my classmates, and I had a very short list. I applied to only a few schools, and I wanted to be just so certain I would get in, which I do not recommend this at all. You definitely should like shoot for the stars, and apply, at all the places that interest you. But that was, like a fear I had. So
hmm.
I think when I started to get the acceptances, it very much was a weight lifted off my shoulder. And
Yeah,
then,
because no one likes rejection. No one likes to work, 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 and then all of a
yeah,
sudden be told, sorry, this isn't for us. And you're like, wait,
right.
why did I do all this work for you to reject me? So yeah, that's a horrible feeling. But that's also why you have a guidance counselor, and hopefully they have an idea of what they're doing, and they can push you in the right direction and go, yeah, maybe Yale is not for you, but this is. And oh, okay, so this is my reality. And we all need that little dose of reality. But yeah, no one likes rejection. That's that, whether
Yeah.
it's a school, a person, whatever it is, no one likes to be turned down.
I think in my case, even a lot of people like teachers, guidance counselors, parents and family friends were telling me like I could have been applying to the Ivies and other prestigious schools, but I was just I was like, are you guys serious? Do you see these admission stats? I'm yeah, like I'm in there, but like they reject so many people. I just don't think I should do it. And I say that as a cautionary tale. Just don't,
Hmm.
um,
Well, it's good to know. Everybody needs to hear all sides, and everybody
yes,
needs to
yeah.
understand. Now, pardon my ignorance, because obviously I have not done the college application in a long time. How are the fees for these things? Are they, how much does it cost to apply?
That's another thing. It costs a lot of money. I can't quite remember now undergrad, but I just submitted my grad school application and the fee was $90.
Wow. And that's one
Um,
school.
yes, and I want to say that's about the fee for maybe it's 75 or so for undergrad. Maybe there's some schools that are lower, maybe $50. But it adds up. And
Right.
so,
It's $75 at 10 schools, all of a
yeah,
sudden it's $750. Like, and you're right out of college yourself. So it's not like you're swimming in money. You work for a think tank. You're not working for, Google. I'm
right.
sure they pay well, but, you still have all these other expenses. And, you were fortunate enough to get a scholarship for your first round of education. And you were explaining that you probably will be able to get another one for this as well.
Yes, I work at Georgetown University, and most universities have benefits for their employees where for you yourself, the employee, or any kids you have, can attend the university at a very low price. Georgetown's benefit is 90% off.
Wow.
It was 100% off before the pandemic.
Oh, but they changed it. Yeah, because I always thought it was 100 myself. I'm glad you brought that up because now I know to say it's not 100 anymore. I appreciate that.
Right. I think, it depends on the school. Maybe they'll change it back now that, we're moving a bit away from the extremes of the
Right.
pandemic.
It would
But
it would be nice for you now that you're going back to school because
yeah, I
10%
wouldn't
is still
mind.
10%.
Yes, but 10% is still
Yeah, that's a heck of a
extremely,
deal. All you have to do is
yes.
show up and do the work, and they're basically paying you to go to school. Yes, that's amazing. I'm so glad. Yeah, I've brought that up many times. I was fortunate not to go to a school of that caliber, but my mom, when I was in college, worked at a community college, and your first 2 years, you can take classes outside of university. You'll get the credit, but not the grade. And I've been trying to explain this to kids that this is how you can cost cut by going to a community college over the summer. You just have to make sure that the courses are the same and that they accept it. And I took 3 or 4 classes and they were free. And because they don't understand how many classes you have to take in order to graduate. Is it still 128 or has it changed?
That number sounds about right. I don't quite remember.
Okay.
And I think in addition to the opportunity to do community college classes, either while you're in undergrad or even, in high school, dual enroll,
Right.
um, the AP and IB credits gave me quite an advantage too. I entered Howard as maybe a first semester sophomore,
Wow. So you
in
cut like
standing.
almost a whole year off of your education to begin with.
Yes, and that helped me out in more ways than one. I had started school as a political science major, and pretty late in the game, my second semester junior year, I realized like I wanted something more, and that I had kind of had a vision for my post grad career in, public policy research, and economics is a big part of that. And I decided to add economics as a major, and the only reason I graduated on time still was because I had the AP and IB and dual enrollment credits from high school. So I'm, really grateful for the fact that I had that, and it gave me the freedom to make like a, you know, third quarter decision like that.
Well, I
So
appreciate
yeah,
you sharing that because I think a lot of my listeners don't quite understand what is involved in that process. And since you most recently have done it, you understand that and it's still in your memory. That's amazing because I try to explain to them whatever Florida gives you, you need to take advantage of it because it's
yes,
going to help
yes,
you out so much. I mean, you don't have to go to FAU High, but that's a huge help. But if you can get into an IB program or an AP program and take all these high level college, basically college level classes in high school, and you score your appropriate, depending on the school, 3, 4, or 5, then you basically can collect the class, meaning you don't have to actually take it and they give you credit for it. And boom, you're already ahead of the game. And that's why many of the interviews have been about people who are like, oh, I graduated in 2 years. And I'm like, how did you do that? And they're like, well, I took all these AP and IB classes. And when I went to college, they were like, oh, yeah, this comes for this, don't have to do it. This is for that, don't have to do it. And before you know it, like yourself, they were either a first semester sophomore or even a first semester junior. I had some kids
right,
who
right.
graduated in 2 years. Like, here you are, 20 years old, and you're done with college. It's like, whoa. And they did what you did. They're like, well, anyway, so I'll get a dual major, or maybe I'll then go for my master's. And, it just makes it so much easier. And especially what you said in the very beginning when we were talking was the financial aspect. You're not overloaded with these heavy duty loans. Cause I mean, like you said, Howard's a private school. I don't even know what it costs. So I couldn't imagine.
Way too much money.
Yes, 4 years. And that's just college. Don't forget, you got to eat, you got books, you got everything that you possibly would have to buy.
Right.
And you're living in a expensive city. DC is not cheap either. So, you're throwing all that on there and you walked away without any debt, which is in this day and age, like unbelievable. Wow.
Pretty unbelievable. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that insight because I don't think a lot of these kids understand it, but you don't have to understand it. But if they hear it from you, then maybe it resonates. So,
Right.
with all of these excellent qualifications and wonderful schools that you went, how did you originally get inspired for learning? What was it about growing up Natalia that went, I want to dive into the deep end of the pool?
I think it really was reading. My mom loves to tell the story of how I was just such a hyper like toddler, could not stop like shouting and singing and rolling around, and then when I learned how to read, like I finally calmed down. I was like entertained by, something other than like my antics.
Because
And
it brought you to a different place. It got you to
yes,
think. You're all that you the thinking is what slowed you down. That's amazing.
yes. And so I would have a book with me wherever we went. If we're at a family party, I'm pulling something off the bookshelf and opening it, and sitting in the corner for the rest of the night because I'm just so, you know, captivated by what I found in this book. So I think it was reading, and I pretty quickly fell in love with the books that were talking about U.S. history, actually.
Wow.
Um, I had this one book that it told the story of all the presidents with fun facts, and it was like my favorite thing. Um, and so I think I was really drawn to like history at first too, and social studies. But that's what inspired me.
Did you? It's there are two things I wanted to ask you. The first one was, wait, you played golf? You didn't play intramural golf with me at Don Estridge, did you?
I didn't, I this in high school, I picked it up. My dad's a big golfer, and the school needed players, and I knew I needed, it would be fun and it would help me out with college, so I picked it up.
And then the other one was, did you do social studies academic games at Don Estridge?
I didn't.
Wow,
I
wow,
should have.
wow. Did you do it in high school?
I didn't.
Oh, wow. Okay, interesting. So this was just something that you just were, it was an enjoyment of your own. And then eventually it was something that you went more into college with. Okay, that's cool.
Yes. Yeah.
So now that we have this love for books and you love to read, and obviously you have this insatiable, I got to keep reading everything that's ever been printed, who was the teacher that possibly inspired that or turned that light bulb on for like, okay, I'm reading for personal, but now all of a sudden this teacher's going, well, what about this? And you were like, whoa, was there a teacher that did it for you?
Um, I think I had a teacher in elementary school who, in the second grade, I had been tested for the gifted program, but my mom didn't want me to switch classrooms mid-year,
Mm,
and she really kept me like excited and challenged with, like extra stuff. And I think in middle school, Miss Adamo and Miss Newman, they really helped me like
with writing.
expand my horizons with reading, and
Okay.
literature, and, you know, also um, in high school, Mr. Marone, the same teacher who was my golf coach, and he taught English and philosophy for me.
Oh, wow.
And he, like when I was enjoying, what we were reading, like Hamlet and Gabriel Garcia Marquez, he, slipped me additional copies of books by, different authors, and he let me keep them too.
Wow. Did
Yeah.
did he continue these conversations onto the golf course? Like when you guys were on the golf course, you would just talk about these authors and these books. Did that happen?
Not really. I think he was a little more focused on my, awful form and
Okay, okay. I can understand that when you're out on the court, and especially in high school because it is competitive. I do intramural golf. We just play each other. You're actually playing other teams. Oh,
yeah,
that's so
yeah.
funny. So, is was there something about this particular teacher or teachers, these groups of teachers that stood out for you that made that aha moment happen? Was it because they understood you better? Was it because they had an interest in you personally, your education, your area that of interest? What do you think it was that made that connection with that teacher?
Um, I think on the one hand, I was a pretty, obedient kid. I want to do what my teachers tell me to do. But it also was special to me that they seemed to think I was special. Um, so
Ah, taking an interest.
yes, taking an interest in me. So and I
Yeah,
think
'cause-
that list goes well beyond, who I mentioned. So many in
oh, I'm
Don
sure.
Estridge and elementary school and high school too. So
Yeah, and as
yeah.
we were discussing earlier, I said that I remembered that you weren't the most outspoken, verbose child, but when you were given your moment to shine, you were like, uh, I don't even know what word to use, a phoenix, a sun. You were just shined, excuse me, so brightly. And it was like, wow, there's something with this kid. And like you said, I would push you in directions that you weren't really sure you could, or you were like, wow, because you just see it. There are just certain kids that stand out and that need not the not the negative attention, that needs the positive attention, that you're
Hmm.
actually like, okay, I know I'm making a difference in this child by pushing them too hard because that's what they need in order to get to where they're going. Whereas some kids will like, a flower out in the desert. Whereas you were like, no, I'm a strong cactus and I'm going to survive because I appreciate the fact I have this ability and I want this ability to be nurtured and to be pushed. And you were all over it. You loved it. And that is the rarity. You don't normally see children of that age like yourself who appreciate the teacher doing that. And When you said that to me earlier, I was like, oh, thank you. Like, wow, I did that. Oh my gosh. um,
Do you remember, or do you still do this, give your students vocab lists?
Not to the way that I used to. No, we have vocabulary, but now it's more germane to the subject matter, whereas the
Hmm.
vocabulary I gave you was germane to life.
Yes. That came up a lot in the many years I was benefiting from all the vocab you had us memorize.
Oh, thank you
Um,
so much. Yeah, that's the idea. Like you want the students to have a larger vocabulary because the better vocabulary you have, the better you sound, and you can write in a different way and it's just not the same rote and routine boring. I'm glad that it actually helped and you were able to use it positively. Thank you.
yes, definitely.
So, if you could turn back time and tell your eighth grade self some advice to maybe make life a little easier for little Natalia, what would you tell her? And most importantly, would she believe you?
I would tell her not to avoid opportunities, like how I had mentioned the college application process. Don't avoid opportunities like that because you're afraid of rejection. And I'd also say that, middle school is a weird time. You will make tons of friends in the future. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. I think I say this in class, I'm sure I said it when you were in class. I think adults see themselves as whatever their most awkward time was in their lives. No matter how much you grow up, you mature, you change, you just see yourself there and you're not terribly happy with it because there wasn't anything you could do. You always felt like you were misstepping. You always felt like you were the odd person out. I am so self-deprecating and make fun of myself all the time. And I'm like, tall, skinny, and redhead just wasn't what the girls were looking for when I was a kid. And you know, but having a great sense of humor really makes a huge difference. It's like the old saying of guys, oh, we're looking for tall, dark, and handsome in our men. And I was like, well, one out of three ain't bad. And it yeah, you have to use what you have. But that middle school years, yeah, it would be great if someone. I even think about it myself. I'm like, man, what happens if adult me went back and I could talk? I met Doc from Back to the Future, and he's like, come on, get in the DeLorean. We got to go help you back in middle school. And I go back, and I'm like, would I even believe me? Like, would I listen to me? The answer is probably emphatically no. I'd be like, first of all, you ain't me. Second of all, what do you know? It's like at 13, you think you know everything, and unfortunately, you know nothing.
Right. You
And
know nothing.
and exactly, life, you have not been hit with life experience at all. Learn how to pay bills, learn how to actually get up and go to school without mommy, screaming your name 1,000 times, get in the car, let's go. That's what I tell them. Like, college is amazing, but it's all about you. And if you're not willing to do it, or if you're not mature enough to do it, you're not going to be successful because no one cares. You paid the money. That's all they care about. Whether you go and do the work, it just doesn't matter. Oh, man. So, going along with all this, what was your most challenging educational experience, excuse me, and how did you overcome that challenge?
Hmm. I I feel like each level was pretty sufficiently challenging, for the age that I was at, but I'd have to say college. Um, I think to get more specific, when I added economics as a second major, I had to take a lot more math, and math had never been my strong suit. But now I sort of had a goal with the math. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
there's this major that I really want to have, and
I
I
have to
have to
do this.
do
I
well
don't
at
have a
this
choice.
math. Right. And I'm going to need this transcript for grad school. So I really have to excel here after, years of um, math not being my star subject. And
And
so
the old adage, suck it up, buttercup, must have come up a lot.
yes, I had to relearn I had to figure out how I was going to succeed as a math student. I, believe it or not, relearned my multiplication tables. I downloaded an app. I started going to office hours. I would ask my parents are actuaries, so they're pretty good with math, and
Wow.
we would get on the phone and I'd send them photos of my textbooks, and they'd walk me through problems. And my mom had been telling me something since elementary school. It's a little extreme, but if you do every problem in the chapter, you won't get a single problem wrong on the test. And I took that
Makes
a
sense.
little bit closer to literally in college. And it started making a lot more sense to me. I would read my math textbook, I think starting in um, elementary school, you kind of just, you skim for the problems and try, and it doesn't go well and you give up. But, if you actually start with the first word on the page, it makes sense.
It makes a huge
So
difference, right? Actually reading what it's telling you to do, not just doing it, right? Nike
yes,
doesn't always work out. Exactly.
yes. So I had to buckle down and just get serious about
So the struggle was real with math for you.
yes, the struggle was real with math for me, and I got an A in every math class I took
Wow.
after I added economics as a major.
So
Um,
you're one of those people. You put your mind to it, and it's going to happen. You put in the effort. You put in the work. You have to do the extra work. You have to do whatever it takes. Like you said, you went to office hours. You went after class to talk to your professors about the math because you needed the extra help. The class wasn't doing it enough. So this is what it takes. It's all based in what I said in the opening paragraph.
yes, and I
Hard
think
work.
it hard work, and I think it was also not making excuses for myself. You hear this a ton in college math. Oh, well, the teacher's awful. The teacher doesn't teach. And it's like, okay, well, even if that is true, like, what are you going to do about it? And
Right.
so I made a commitment to myself that I was going to attend every class, which in college is not necessarily always the case. And I said, well, I'm going to bring my book, and even if this particular teacher isn't the greatest, lecturer, I'm going to work on the problems in the book while I'm in the class. Like, this is still my dedicated, math time. So, like, just setting boundaries with myself and figuring out what it was going to take for me to succeed.
Wow. Did you? I just thought of something. Did you have any language barriers? Because it always seems like the math teacher is someone from a foreign country with an accent that you just don't seem to understand, and they're teaching you something that you just don't understand, and it just becomes twice as confusing. Did that ever happen
Yes,
to you?
yes. Generally at Howard, a lot of professors with African accents.
Wow.
But I have to say, because my family is Jamaican,
Ah,
accents generally
you
aren't.
had an unfair advantage.
Yeah, I kind of knew. I was understanding what he was saying.
Oh, that's so great. But yeah, that's what happens in math. They usually get someone from a foreign country with a very thick accent, and you're teaching me
Mhm.
something I don't understand, and I can't understand you. It's frustrating, but like Natalia said, you become what you have to do. You're your best advocate, and you have to go out there and help yourself. You have to go
Right.
out there and solve your own problems. It's
You
not like
you
middle school where you can just complain about it and miraculously they get fixed.
Yeah, you can't add a note to your transcript like, this professor was from Nigeria and he was a little hard to understand.
Right.
It doesn't work that way.
And that's why I didn't do so well. Right. No, it
Yeah.
doesn't matter. They don't care. You all get to take the same math class. I'm sorry that you got it with someone from a foreign country. Oh my God, that's incredible. Wow. I'm glad you brought that up because I try to talk about that in class that you're going to get to college, you're going to take a class which you wanted to take, but you get a professor that you didn't want, and you don't have a lot of choice because it's only offered once a year. And if you don't take it now, you're not going to graduate on time. And there,
Right.
there become all of these stumbling blocks in the way. For most of them, their education is pretty much planned out like, okay, you have to take this, you do that, and then move forward. Whereas college, it doesn't always work that way. And no one really wants to listen to you because this is our way of doing it. You either do it or you don't. And those are your choices.
And I have to say, on the preferred professor aspect of it, I realized too on my journey at Howard that checking rate my professor
Wow.
didn't actually end up making that much of a difference for me, because like you said, if I was going to graduate on time, I needed to take the class anyway.
Right.
And I realized, if I'm going to class and I'm taking notes and I'm making notes in my calendar as to what the syllabus says when things are due, all the mean comments on rate my professor, they had nothing, that was very far from my experience.
Right.
So it really has more to do with you and the organization you're having and the effort you're putting in than whether or not the professor's rating on some
It,
website is good or not.
you just made me remember something from my childhood. I love doing these interviews because it jogs my brain for things that I haven't thought about in forever.
Yeah.
I remember as a kid something similar that my brother and I would wait for, I guess it was Siskel and Ebert, and they were movie reviewers for New York. And they would come on every week and they would review all the new movies. And my brother and I finally got to the point where whatever was the movie that they reviewed the worst, that they hated, that they refused, like they almost walked out and left. It was so bad. That's the movie we would go see because I'm like, I don't agree with anything you ever say. So I'm going to go with the opposite. It's kind of like opposite George from Seinfeld, who did the opposite of everything that he was used to doing, and his life turned around and changed. So when they said that this movie was horrible, that's the one I wanted to go see. And sure enough, we loved it. Why? Because we were kids. We weren't adults. We didn't have the same viewpoint. So
Right.
everyone sees things in a different way. And just because someone doesn't like a professor, like you said, they probably have a reasoning because they didn't go to class, they didn't turn things on time, they didn't follow directions. And instead of blaming themselves, which most people can't, they don't want to be, go on the deep dive inside the
Self-awareness. Yeah.
exactly. They blame someone else. So following these things, it's just kind of like you're looking for a review on something on Amazon, and like every single thing is unbelievably fantastic, and you're like, it's impossible. Somebody had to have a bad experience. So you take it with a grain of salt. And you were smart enough to realize, well, it doesn't matter what these people have to say. I have to take this class anyway. So thanks for the heads up. But and it's also my favorite professor. I had so many people who were like, oh man, I hate that guy. He's awful and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. This guy's like the greatest professor I've ever had. And they're like, well, you love history and you know history. And I go, but that's what the class is. Like, if you know what you're talking about and you enjoy it, it makes it a lot easier. Like, why are you in here if you don't like it and you don't like the teacher? And
Right.
that happens as well. But you find that niche and you find that thing that you like, and you find that person that brings it alive for you. Like there's a professor, off the top of my head, I can't remember his name. He's across the street from Lynn University. He's on the Sunday morning political show from time to time. Big, tall guy, dark hair, amazing professor, just the coolest down to earth guy. I love listening to him talk. And I'm like, I've even told him many times, I'm like, man, I wish I had a professor like you. You're so interesting. And he's like, thank you so much. And obviously, I've been doing teaching history for a really long time. So for me to find someone like that was just really cool. And you just connect with certain people. They bring you to a place that possibly you never thought educationally you could go.
Right.
So with all of these tough classes in high school, college, and now this graduate school endeavor that you plan on taking, how does Natalia, like, what does she do to give herself some downtime? Like, what's the inner Natalia? Like, what do you like to do, like, beyond reading, or what is it that you have an interest in that really goes, okay, I'm good, I can relax now?
Um, Going to college in DC, I got really into like exploring the city, um, trying like new restaurants, new bars, like just going on long walks. I'm a really big walk-in podcast person or music person, and also like museums. And there's just so much. There's a lot of fun, free things going on in DC, or even just fun and affordable things. So, like exploring those things like on my own or with friends or with my boyfriend is a way that I have me time, I think. And I also really like TV.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
DC area is amazing for all of those things with the museums and the history and politics, which is something that you liked. And just being there, there's so much that it offers. And being a college student, people don't maybe understand. You get even more discounts. You show your college ID, and especially in an area like DC, they cater to kids because they know that if they have a cheaper price or even a free entry, they're going to go and experience it. And that's a great thing. You want to pick a university that's located in a place that offers those things. I mean, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Maybe you're going to university for your specific area of study, and it might not be in a flashy city or town like that. It's not DC, New York, or LA or San Francisco or wherever. You're the outside, what it offers, I think, is just as important as what the education is, because you need to have this downtime. If, like you said, you're taking all these very difficult classes and you need some time. But what's interesting is the things you mentioned actually go with what you wanted to do. So you were placed perfectly in the right setting, and you, whether unbeknownst to yourself or smartly, you did it. it that's an amazing thing that you put yourself in that situation. That's incredible.
Yeah. It's definitely been the city for me. But DC is, I mean, for any of your students who are interested in not just politics or policy or law, but there's a big like business community here, big international community. And I think the biggest perk was students all around the country fight for summer internships here in DC. And all those companies and organizations offering summer internships, they need fall and spring interns too. So I got to intern most semesters, just because I was here in DC.
Yes, being in the right, literally as the right time. You were
Yeah,
in an area that needed it. And most people thought, oh, it's only for this. No, they need people all year long. The government's always working, it's opened all the time. So they need people to be able to volunteer their time to get experience. And that's who they're looking for.
yeah, exactly.
So I was wondering if there was something that you could describe to the kids for you that was a real distinctual difference between middle school and high school? Because they always ask me questions that I can ask you guys when I interview. They're like, oh, well, what really was it like, that huge leap difference? Because, the teachers always tell you, oh, high school is going to be so much more difficult and different. And they're like, well, what do those words actually mean? So for you, what was the big differentiation between your jump from middle school to high school?
I think there were more opportunities. I definitely, I mean, as we touched on, didn't take advantage of all the extracurricular opportunities at Don Estridge, but there are more opportunities for your time. You can have a part-time job. There are more sports. They're more competitive. There are volunteer opportunities like within the school, but also within the city. The You have more choices with your classes too. Um, and all of the work is just more challenging. I think there's a big contingent of us who went from Don Estridge to Atlantic, and we felt like we were pretty well prepared, but that's definitely a leap to just the different level of rigor.
Because you're going into a brand new situation and you don't really know what it is until you actually do it. And that's the
Right.
problem. It's like I tell the kids now, all right, here we are in the third quarter. You're closer to being in high school than you are in middle school. And they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, you just did 2.5 years of middle school. You have a half year left of middle school, and then you're going to be in high school. So you're really closer to high school. And then they ask, but I don't understand. What does that mean? And the rigor is going to be more. Whatever you think now, you think this is difficult. Well, high school, it's going to keep stepping it up and stepping it up. That's why every quarter I try to step it up a little bit more so it's more challenging, because the idea is for us in eighth grade to prepare you for high school. So when you get there, you're like, oh, this isn't so bad. I already did a lot of this stuff. I mean, there's some new things, but for the most part, I've already done all this. I know how to study. I know how to organize. I know how to keep all my papers together. I understand what my due dates are and when I have to turn things in. Because like you alluded to in college, like that's all on you. No teacher is up you're behind going, where's the paper? What are you doing? You're like, I just didn't do it. And that's it. You paid for it. They have your money.
Right.
And there's a huge maturation period and a huge transition from middle school to high school, from high school to college, but you don't understand it until you're actually doing it. And you just are like, okay, this is what I have to do. These are the expectations, but you've lived it, and it helps a lot. So is there anything that you felt like when you got to high school that you learned from Don Estridge as a school when you left? Like you're like, oh my gosh, Don Estridge taught me whatever, fill in the blank.
Um, I think I got pretty good at organization while I was at Don Estridge. I think especially like all of the teachers are so intentional about upping that rigor so you're prepared, and it gets to a point where you're overwhelmed and you got to figure out how you're going to manage that stress and manage your due dates. So I think middle school at Don Estridge specifically gave me the opportunity to like hone that skill before starting freshman year.
And then, of course, that continued on to college, your job,
Yes,
and now we'll go into graduate school where you have to now really economize your time because
right. While I'm
I was,
working.
yes, I was fortunate enough that I went from college. I took a year off and I'm like, okay, do I really want to go to graduate school? Worked for a year and went, yes, I do. and then, and then went to graduate school and didn't have to work. And, I knew a lot of people in the program were just like yourself. They worked during the day and then they went to school at night. And all I had to do was go to school. And it makes a huge difference because you have to economize your time. You have to know, okay, these errands need to be run. I have a full-time job now. So college, you really weren't working, were you?
I was working a lot. I most semesters I was interning um 20 hours a week or
Oh, wow.
so. So I'd kind of either stack my classes where my classes were in the morning and then
Mm.
I'd take the metro to the office in the afternoon, or I would stack my classes to be on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then I'd work Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays. Um, so that definitely was a lot. I mean, I loved every second of it. The internships were so exciting, but yeah,
But this was
so
something you wanted to do. You took this upon yourself. You didn't, did you, or maybe I'm wrong. Did you have someone that was pushing you into the internship itself, or were you just like, I need this to get experience to move to what I want to do, or it just was like, this is exciting to me and I just want to do it?
I think it was me. It was a little of both. I was pushing myself. I knew, like I wanted to get a good job after I graduated, and internships are a way to achieve that. And then also, I wanted to take advantage of, being in DC. I got to intern for two senators, and then also work at a like an issue advocacy campaigning firm. And I worked at a public policy consulting firm, and I did research at a public education trade organization.
Wow.
So
That's
just
your resume is unbelievable. I mean, you realized, okay, I have the opportunity to get all the experience that I need to get a job in the future, and you did it. So you're basically realized that the experience was being offered to you if you're willing to take it and do it. The negative is, I guess these kids would say, is well, you did it for free, but ultimately it's not.
well,
You're
I the first internship with former Florida Senator Bill Nelson, that was my only unpaid one. After then,
really,
everything was paid,
oh, that's
including my
incredible.
other Senate internship. So it was nice because, I'm attending school for free. Um, and then on top of that, I was, working, and I had a little bit of pocket money to, do some
Have some
fun
fun.
things. So
Yeah, that
yeah.
see, I didn't realize that because I always thought that internships were total voluntary, unpaid. That's incredible. Thank you for pointing that out. That's amazing.
I think nowadays, more often than not, you'll find plenty of paid opportunities. And I challenge students to, before taking the unpaid, make sure, that there is not another similar paid opportunity, like in industry.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's very important, and I think that's a really good thing to say because even I didn't realize that. That's incredible. So you're not just because you don't want to feel like I'm volunteering and I'm wasting my time and they're getting everything and I'm getting nothing. And wow, so you're getting paid and you were building your resume, which helped you along the line to get to this particular place, to get to this job. And now you've parlayed that into, okay, I'm going to go to graduate school and I'm going to get this degree to help me to move along. And so was there a master plan? What was there something along the line, or did the plan just constantly get updated?
The plan constantly got updated. It was funny because I remember saying when I went to Howard that this was my plan to do a bunch of very different internships to
Hmm.
figure out, like what I wanted to do as an adult. And I executed on that, and it helped me figure out what I wanted to do post grad. And now, the plan is updating. I thought at one point I wanted to get a PhD, and I did a summer program at UC Davis at
Wow.
their Center for Poverty Research. They bring HBCU students out to it's like a pre PhD program. And then with the guarantee that, you could come back to a UC school, so UCLA, UC Berkeley, UC
Right.
Davis, and get a PhD with like an extra fellowship, extra funding.
Wow.
And I ended up deciding, I wasn't interested in the PhD route, but it helped me figure out that I am very interested in policy research and, the think tank apparatus of DC and, being able to influence um, federal policymaking in that way. So, yeah.
You really subscribe to the no experience is a bad experience theory, don't you?
I really do.
I
Yeah.
can tell. I can totally tell because you're like, I went out there, it wasn't for me, but that doesn't mean I didn't get anything out of it. Most people are like, oh, I went all the way out there and yeah, California's beautiful, but it was a waste of my time. And for you, it doesn't seem like anything is a waste of your time. You are so inclined to finding the positive in anything, everything that you're like, okay, it didn't work out for me personally, but I still was able to take this, and this from it. That's incredible.
Yes, even down to get very particular in the program, I they had us draft a personal statement to apply to PhD programs, and I found it when I was this was back in 2019, and now it's 2023, and I'm finalizing my grad school application, and I very much like the essay was very much based on what I had written, years ago. So yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. I mean, just having this way about yourself, just seeing you grow up into this wonderful person and see how you continued on with this educational love and desire to keep moving forward and finding something that you love, and you found it pretty early and you're just continuing to go with it, which is amazing because you can hear the excitement, the joy, the love, the passion in your voice about what it is that you're doing. And that's what it's all about. You're going to spend the next 30 or 40 years, I know it's hard to believe, doing this. You might as well enjoy it. And here you are already enjoying it and trying to make it even better. Whereas I think many of your cohorts of your age probably are still like, okay, I graduated college and now what? I have this degree and what am I supposed to do with it? And you just seem to be on this choo choo chugga 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 path and you're just keep going down the track and it's like nothing's getting in your way. You're Natalia, the train engine, forget Thomas, you're going and it's happening and it's working. And that's what's so amazing that you found it and then you realize this is it and this is direction I'm going. But yet you had some, maybe some derailments where it's like, well, I thought I was going to do this. Okay, well, now I'm going to do that. And it,
Yeah.
it, it, it was just like, okay.
I studied for the LSAT. I took the LSAT.
Wow, you took the LSAT, but nope, wasn't your thing. I mean, that's
Right. I really enjoyed actually studying for that exam. I did pretty well, and I was like, I don't want to go to law school. I'm sorry I spent all that time on the test,
but
but
I disagree. I don't think you're sorry that you spent all that time because you're such an avid learner and you enjoy doing these things. I think that it was a challenge, and you're that kind of person that's like, I'm up for it. I'm going to take the challenge. I'm going to
that's
do it.
true.
And then
That's
you
true.
realize, okay, I did it, and nah, I don't want to do it. And that the intestinal fortitude that takes is unbelievable. Because most people are like, okay, I just put 100 hours into studying this or whatever it was, and now I did really well. Well, let's apply and see where it goes. And you already knew, I don't want to do it. And that is a very rare attribute and a very rare talent and skill that you have that makes you such an extraordinary person, and you're fine with it. And a lot of people would have been like, okay, well, this is the direction I'm going in now, and then you would have found yourself sitting in law 101 or whatever class it was, and you're like, check please, why am I here, what am I doing here, what did I do this for? And that's an amazing attribute to say, like you said earlier, being afraid to fail, that somebody wasn't going to pick you for a university, but the fact that you put all this time and effort into it, you made the decision. You didn't let someone say no. You said, nah, this isn't for me. That's a huge leap of maturity. And to be able to do that at such a young age, you just continue to amaze me at your abilities and the way that your mind works. And I'm sure there's many people that are going to listen to this and go, wow, once again, if she can do this, why can't I?
Well, thank you.
Sure. No, of course. So as I end all these podcasts, I always have to ask the same question because I know you've been away from the Don for about a minute, but Do you remember who Don Estridge, the person, was and what he accomplished?
Um, he worked for IBM. He had something to do with IBM's first computer.
I'm going
And
to give you the applause. Oh,
oh, thank you, thank you.
very, very good. So Don Estridge was the original IBM building. They sold it to the county, and then the county turned it into a school. Well, supposedly, he invented the personal computer there, and that was the building that it happened in. We luckily have his personal computer. The family gave it to us because, unfortunately, I believe it was in 1984. Him and his wife died in a plane crash. But then when we decided that we were going to name the school after him, the family wanted to give us his own personal computer, not the first one, but just the one that he used. And it sits in a cabinet in the office, and that's why it's named Don Estridge. And
I think I've seen it. I vaguely remember the computer.
It's been there. Yeah. It's been there since day one. Like when there was a dedication ceremony to the school. My favorite is to ask all of my engineer friends, "Hey, who's Don Estridge?" I say this all the time, and they're like, I'm like, "You wouldn't have a job without him." And they know the name, but they just can't place it. They just can't remember. It's so funny. So I'm so glad you were able to remember that. That's amazing. And on behalf of myself and the How I Got Here podcast, I just wanted to thank you so much for taking the time to tell your story. And I know you will definitely influence many young boys and girls into deciding what it is that they want to do. Maybe it might not be public policy, but you know what? It's giving them the idea that they can do whatever they want if they put their heart, soul, time, and effort into it. They're going to find what Natalia was able to find. And I really appreciate you coming on and telling us all about you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. I'm happy to be here. And I hope your students enjoy, and I hope they recognize that they 8th grade's really special. And I hope they enjoy it before it's gone.
Thank you again. Thank you for listening to How I Got Here podcast with Mr. Proper. Music provided by Miss Mata. Thank you, Patty Fernandez, for production. Thank you to Seth Proper for logistics and behind-the-scenes production. Join us next time for another episode of How